Hi everyone, I'm Padmi Dissanayake. I'm a Chief People Officer and have been working within the people and culture field for the last 30 years and have worked for large multinationals including GE, Pfizer and ResMed, then transitioned to the private and non-for-profit sector and currently working in the disability sector. I've led teams across 38 countries globally in the US, Europe, Australia and the APAC markets, and I specialise in change and transformations, including digital transformations to service delivery solutions and cultural transformations. Today, I'd like to share my approach on scaling organisations and ensuring that your people experience is aligned to your organisational strategy and enhances your employee value proposition. First and foremost, my first tip is around person-centered approach. So what does that mean? Well, based on the Harvard Executive Research, we start by focusing on the empathetic prioritization at the individual level. Essentially, that means understanding what the team member at the front line is required to do to meet the demands of your client, ensuring your internal systems and processes are seamless in a way that enables them to spend more time allocated to their external client as opposed to being internally focused. So if you translate that to billable hours, for example, then that is going to increase your revenue lines. Secondly, in terms of the next tip, it's about finding the correct digital service delivery platforms and solutions and making sure that the information for those team members is readily available on demand, leveraging that technology. For example, say you're an Australian business and thinking about scaling internationally, you may not necessarily have the funding or the resources to put a number of headcounts or resources on the ground, but you might have one team member to start off with. So what does that look like for that one individual? How do you make sure that they feel connected to the infrastructure back in Australia and make sure that they have access to all the relevant systems and processes and policies to be productive, right? So this is where solutions such as a NeoCase or a ServiceNow platform can be leveraged and is highly effective. And finally, we need to be able to drive that change with empathy. And this is where you're going to spend a substantial amount of time understanding the current state and mapping the future state and co-designing it with that person-centered approach and prototyping it and testing it with the end users, looking at all the relevant integrations that within your digital ecosystem. And finally, focusing on training and communications. And this is where you're going to work through a process that I like to use called ADCAR. And starting with raising awareness of the change, you're bringing in initiatives to raise the desire of the change. You're going to increase the team members' knowledge and train them to increase their ability to implement the change, and then reinforcing the change through recognizing their efforts when they've actually done something great and right in the new way of working. So by taking these three simple methodical steps, this will enable you to ensure that your person sitting in, say for example, your Sydney office has the same experience as the individual sitting in Malaysia. And overall, the only caveat that you'll be allowing for is the differentiation between your local legislation and regulatory requirements, as well as taking into consideration your cultural nuances. So from a business perspective, this brings in the concept of your economies of scale, increasing operational efficiency, it's greater productivity and engagement, and really strengthens your employee value proposition.